we'll just pour right into our guest. It's Father Vincent Lampert. Father Vince,
welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be with you this evening, and hopefully be able to share any insights that I may have that will be of interest to your listeners.
Great. We could start off probably with the old question of how did you end up being an exorcist? Give us a little background, and then we'll get going with a lot of the shop talk, so to speak.
Sure.
Tell us about yourself.
I've been the exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis since 2005, so I was appointed by my local bishop. Every Catholic bishop is a exorcist by virtue of their episcopal ordination, and then the Church says that if a bishop chooses to do so, he can bestow that charism on one of his priests. So it wasn't a job that I went looking for. It was a job that found me, and so I've been doing this for the past 9 years.
Mm-hmm. So as a young child, you didn't have that big question, should I be a priest, or, instead of should I be an exorcist? So it just seems like people want to be a priest just to be an exorcist nowadays.
When my bishop appointed me, because of course my number one question was, why me? And he said, I need a priest who believes in the reality of evil, but not one who's going to believe that everyone comes to him is dealing with evil. There may be some other issues that they need to help resolve in their lives.
Which is a lot more accurate to say than automatically jump the gun and say, oh, yes, this person is spewing demons out the right nostril. Father, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because there's a lot of mystery surrounding the entire office of exorcism. And I know from our research in the books we've written, we found that the office of the exorcist has been around since the 4th century in the Roman Catholic Church. And we started the major rite of exorcism in, I believe it was the 16th century. Can you tell me when you were asked to be an exorcist by your bishop?
When I was told.
How did you prepare for this?
Yeah, I wasn't asked to do this, so I was told to do this. When one is ordained priest, you promise obedience to your bishop and his successors. So even when my bishop appointed me, he told me that he wasn't even very clear on what he was asking me to do. But I was planning on going on a sabbatical in Rome in 2006 in the early part of the year. So he goes, while you're on sabbatical, you can go ahead and research this while you're over in Rome, because when I was appointed back in 2005, there was only 12 officially appointed exorcists in the United States.
Amazing. How many is there now, Father?
There's probably around 50.
Oh, that's amazing. That's like more than double the number. While in Rome, Father, were you able to attend any exorcisms there in Rome, or did you basically take training and enjoy your sabbatical?
I was able to connect with an exorcist in Rome who allowed me to mentor with him. And then during the 3 months I lived in Rome, I was able to participate in 40 exorcisms that he performed.
Oh, goodness. That's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, he did more than that. I mean, he literally would have 30, 40 people show up every day outside of his office hoping for an opportunity to speak with him. Some would have an appointment, some would not. And then he would do his best to try to minister to as many as he could.
That's incredibly amazing. Now, would you say, because I do know from my own Spanish background that the Italian culture is a little bit different than the American culture here as far as religious norms, as far as superstitions, traditions, and to tell you honestly, as a Catholic, I can understand it. But a lot of people that are listening, they can't possibly understand how a priest could have 30 people coming to him a day for exorcisms. And my question for you is how do we explain that to people, why there is a greater need in Italy, and the need is only just coming in trickle down here in America? Do you think we have greater health care, greater, availability to medical doctors? Why do you think this is a big discrepancy, Father?
Well, I think certainly in the United States we have access to better overall health care, maybe mental health care. But at least in Italy, people are more readily to accept the reality of evil. Whereas perhaps here in the United States, everyone is quick to say that perhaps evil doesn't exist, it's not personified in some particular being that we would call the devil, but evil is nothing more than humanity's inhumane treatment of one another. So in the Western world, we seem to be quick to discount the reality of evil, whereas in other parts of the world, even in Italy, they would accept that as a possibility.
It's a normal part of their daily life, in other words, whereas here it is a fabricated, ideological concept that the media feeds us for fun. Is that what you're basically telling us?
Well, it's either the media or just people on their own come to that conclusion. Because the reality is, and there's a fascination with evil that sometimes is misplaced. You know, if you're going to give a presentation and speak about the person of Jesus Christ, maybe 10 people will show up. But if you're going to give a presentation on evil and the devil, you know, you'll have 200 people show up.
That's for sure. Yeah. I wondered, too, about personality disorders, too, in Europe, that over here, people, they almost want the haunting, so they get the attention of living in a haunted house or a possession, and, you know, a form of narcissism or histrionic B. You get kind of an equal amount of that, you know, from according to your colleagues and your experiences in Europe versus America?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at here in the United States, the most popular shows on TV today have to do with the paranormal or ghost hunting and hauntings and werewolves and vampires and everything of that nature. So there is a lot of fascination with all of that. The reality, though, in the United States, a lot of people think that that's just all fun and games. It's just entertaining. People don't readily accept the fact that perhaps they're truly dabbling with evil when they get involved in all these things. And then oftentimes when they realize they're dabbling with evil, they don't really know where to turn, and that's when they'll contact me or one of my other colleagues in the ministry.
Father, what would you say that is like the top 3 reasons that people have either encountered evil or invited evil into their lives where it is necessary, absolutely necessary, to call in an exorcist such as yourself?
Those occasions would be extremely rare, because at least from a Catholic perspective, there would be, demonic activity can be classified as ordinary, which is temptation, something that we all deal with on a daily basis. But demonic activity can also be extraordinary. Extraordinary forms would be infestation, which would have to do with a location or an object. There can be demonic vexation, which are physical attacks, demonic obsession, which are mental attacks, and then demonic possession. But an exorcist should only be called on in cases of demonic possession. Any priest, any other minister of one's church should be able to deal with those other degrees, once again, those being infestation, vexation, and obsession. So cases of when the exorcist should be called are, in my opinion, should be extremely rare.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because that was an excellent description of the various forms leading to possession. And my question for you is going a little bit further into the actual exorcist role. We understand as Catholics there is a big difference between the major rite of exorcism, which is what you have been anointed and appointed to do. There's also a minor exorcism, and is the minor exorcism now allowed by Vatican II for both priest and lay ministers or lay deliverance ministers, Catholic laity, to pray with people that are in the early stages, let's say, the mental, the vexation, and the infestation stage?
Impression.
Yeah, because those only require, I always refer to them, so major exorcism would be a command given to a demon to depart in the name of Jesus Christ based on the authority that he gave to the church. And then you could have a supplicating exorcism, which is a prayer directed to God. And to me, a supplicating exorcism could be a deliverance prayer. And certainly there are no limitations on who may do a supplicating exorcism prayer, because ultimately the overall goal is to help somebody who's suffering, and anyone can pray. But at least when it comes to a major exorcism, the church says that should only be done by a priest who's been appointed by his bishop to do that.
Good question. That reminds me of something, too. I remember Father Amorth he had issues with the 1999 revision of the official exorcism being used, and when I looked at it, it looked like deliverance prayers, stuff that doesn't sound like a direct battle. It sounds like preparing for the battle. It's not so confrontational and direct. I was just wondering what your thought of this 1999 revision was, and does it seem to you that it was almost created so it's more universal and clergy and or a special laity could perform that? Because it's I remember modifying some great deliverance prayers that I found that were actually for priests, and I put in there, I humbly ask in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord and by his precious blood. I put these buffers in there to keep it so it's not directly commanding the spirit, and it would be more for a laity to perform. Just wondering what your thoughts about that are.
Now, there's a lot of criticism, I think, of the new Rite of Exorcism. In my opinion, that's unjustified, because ultimately it's the prayer of the church, and if it's the prayer of the church, then certainly it's good enough for me. But when I think about the new Rite of Exorcism, so it came out in 1999, it was the very last liturgical rite to be updated after the Second Vatican Council, that from 1962 to 1965.
Yes.
So in 1999, they finally updated that, and that replaced the rite of 1614 that had been in place. But the new rite, when you look at it, it was meant to include supplicating exorcism prayers as well, as you suggest. I think the overall goal was to put the pastoral care of those suffering from evil in the hands, at least of every parish priest, was the perspective of that translation. And then it also included major exorcism prayers, because there's no way, if there's only 50 exorcists appointed in the United States, there's no way that we can deal with the volume of calls that we receive. I always believe that exorcism needs to be seen within the broader scope of overall pastoral care. And people are ultimately going to receive pastoral care from their local parish or the church to which they belong. So for me as an exorcist, I want to work with their priest or with their minister to assist them in how to offer pastoral care to this person who's suffering. So I can't take on the role, but I can help guide and direct those who are going to be there day in and day out for these people.
Excellent, Father.
And I think you're right, when you mentioned that there is a role for the laity in helping to pray and meet with people. That's just, a call that all of us have. It's, the church talks about the common priesthood of all believers. So, the major exorcism is a liturgical rite of the church, so there's a prescribed way to do that. But there is a role of the laity in all this, and they need to be involved as well.
Father, a common misconception, before we go on, we have a number of people that have emailed us because they are either Catholic and very observant, they are Orthodox, or they are Anglican, Methodist, and there's a common misconception. Can you please clear up the misconception? If you are an observant Christian, say go to church, can you still become, through the infestation, the aggravation, can you still become possessed? If you are a Christian, can you be possessed?
Well, I think the answer to that would be yes. I mean, if one goes back on their faith, they don't live it out, because it's easy to say that one is a Christian, but that's a relationship that has to be lived out each and every day. I think there are several bishops in the United States, including Archbishop Charles Chaput of Philadelphia, who's commented time and time again that there are many people today who wear the label of being a Christian, but in reality they don't know the person of Jesus Christ. So because one makes that profession, what's the litmus test for that? I mean, I've encountered people that will tell me they're a Christian, and yet they're dabbling in the occult and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we have too, Father. That's why I really appreciate you clearing that up. It's a relationship, and that bottom line relationship is important for all of us to maintain, especially for those of us who are in the deliverance ministries and healing ministry of prayer and assisting people with haunting problems. I think people do not think twice. They think it's a lot of fun and games.
Yeah, I was going to say that. When I minister to people, the number one question to be asked is, if evil is present here, what was the entry point? So did people invite the evil in directly or indirectly? So sometimes people indirectly invite evil in because they're dabbling in things they think are fun and entertaining, and they don't realize they're opening up a doorway to evil. You know, sometimes people directly open that doorway because they know very well what they're doing goes against, the teachings of the church, against, for one who claims to be a Christian, and so they invite that evil in.
And we've been talking about these gadgets out there that ghost hunters use, and they find new ways to reinvent the Ouija board with electronic devices that scan radio frequencies to assemble intelligible speech. I think they call it the ghost box commonly, and they can modify one out of a Radio Shack little AM radio, and they do the same thing with some other unit. It's a speech synthesizer that randomly generates the speech. It's Ovilist, somebody's name wrong, because I take after my dad. He used to say December in cement. And we just put that word in there, and I misspelled it. I spelled it obelisk, which is something totally different. But the new electronic mediums, as I referred to them as once, guess what? There's a pink Ouija board. I don't know if it's Barbie's brand, and all of these are, a problem. And have you actually?
And the apps are available on phone too. Remember those, Kenny? We found there's apps on the phone to pick out ghosts out of a house.
Yeah, I think the challenge with all of this, though, is how do we, as Christians, of people of faith, try to bring back a positive image of Christianity? Because a lot of people today will look at Christianity and perhaps it's outdated, it's boring, it no longer fits where people are at. So we as a people of faith need to once again ask ourselves, how are we going to preach the good news to an audience that perhaps is starting to turn a deaf ear to it? Because it's not just enough to kind of lament where society is. We have to say, what can we do about that?
I think the new Pope is doing a good job of making these connected bridges. He gives a lot of enlightening talks, and he's multilingual, very good at English. I know that sometimes he can be taken out of context. What are your thoughts about the new Pope and the direction that he's going? Or you think it's the same old
change, positive change for our priests?
Mm-hmm. I don't think the Pope is changing the message of the Church. He perhaps is changing the tone, because the Church has to be true to Christ and his teachings, but how we convey his teachings perhaps can be done in a different manner. There's a lot of people today that take the Pope out of context, especially when it comes to his comments about the poor and the economy. But, it's like reading the Bible, when it's so easy to take things out of context if you grab something here or there. But one has to look at Pope Francis and his writings consistently, and don't just read what he said about the economy, but read what he has to say about the poor, the dignity of the human person. Pull all of those things together, and you're going to see a very clear message that I think talks about the dignity of the human person as created in the image and likeness of God. That's a message that Pope Benedict would convey. Certainly it was a very dominant theme of the pontificate of Blessed John Paul II. So there's also that danger when people start judging the popes, and they'll say, well, Pope Francis seems to be a breath of fresh air compared to Pope Benedict. But people have to realize that it was Pope Benedict who laid the groundwork for a pope like Pope Francis to come on the scene.
Oh, I agree 100%. I have a question about your time in Rome as well, during your sabbatical that turned into a work sabbatical. I'm curious, Father, because and this is cultural too, because I love going to different countries and being a part of the music and the local fair and the local everything, from a walk in the park to the music. When you came back, did you bring insights, not just from the lessons in exorcism? What would you say were some of your most memorable things that you brought back with you that you could incorporate into your walk with Christ here in your own parish from Rome?
Well, the purpose of the sabbatical program was to be a period of renewal. So at the time, I had already been ordained a priest for 15 years. Sometimes you can kind of reach some dryness, kind of go through the motions. So it's an opportunity to get away, do some studying, be able to kind of find extra time for prayer, centering one's life on Christ, and kind of learn kind of the some of the current thought going on in the church. So it's meant to kind of bring some freshness into the life of a priest. So I was certainly able to experience that. I mean, we had courses on church history, on liturgy, the sacraments, you name it. So all that was going on. And then conversely, I was also going over and meeting this Franciscan priest who was my mentor and working on the whole ministry of exorcism. Now, I would say that taking on the role of being an exorcist has kind of changed my priesthood in such a way that it challenges me to see being a priest not just as an occupation, but truly as a vocation, and vocation in the true sense of the word, meaning a calling from God. Because you look at the church today, at least the Catholic Church in the United States, priests can get bogged down in so much administration. And being an administrator is a part of being a priest, so we have to embrace and accept that. But it should be that we just don't start neglecting the main reason why we were ordained priests, which is the pastoral care of souls.
Yes. And I believe the Pope addressed that in a recent, I think they call it an encyclical, that he addressed his flock by asking his priests not to get bogged down in the administration and to become closer and in closer touch with their flock and taking the time instead of following their schedules to allow for schedule changes. And I find that very, very admirable. We as Catholics, we look to our priests for constant reassurance, guidance. As a matter of fact, we just called our priest earlier today about a question we had. And I think that, if you're, Unitarian, Methodist, you look to the pastor to let you know this is what our behavior is, this is what we do. And as an exorcist, you rely on sacramentals. Could you explain why those sacramentals are so very important during the ritual of exorcism to people?
Well, the sacramentals represent the main components of the Christian faith. So when you think of the devil or the other fallen angels, the demons, they've rejected, you could say, the incarnation, the birth, the passion, death, and resurrection and ascension of Jesus Christ. So in the rite of exorcism, evil is defeated by taking the very things that the devil has rejected and literally throwing them in his face. And so the elements of the faith are revealed through the sacramentals of the church, which is why there would be a crucifix. That's a reminder of the crucifixion of Christ. There's the blessed holy water, which has to do with the sacrament of baptism, the new life of Christ. There's the Bible is there, the reading of Scripture, very specifically the accounts of Jesus casting out the demons, the bread of life discourse found there in John's Gospel. So it's the very things that the devil rejects that is used to defeat him.
Do you ever get called outside your archdiocese very much to do cases of exorcism, or do you primarily work inside the archdiocese? How busy are you outside of your own jurisdiction, so to speak?
Well, I can say that right now I'm, in addition to the role of exorcist, I'm also the only priest assigned to a parish of 1,600 families just on the south side of Indianapolis.
Wow.
So it's a parish that's experiencing major growth. When I arrived here 11 years ago, we had 600 families, so now we have 1,600 families. We opened a grade school that has 500 children in it now. We have a religious ed program that has 750 children that attend every Sunday morning. I'm also a judge on the Metropolitan Tribunal, helping people going through divorce and wanting to remarry in the church. I receive probably 10 phone calls and emails a week from people all over the United States inquiring about the ministry of exorcism. So I have someone in my parish who now is my executive assistant who helps respond and return all these phone calls because there's no way that I could take that all on my own. So as an exorcist, I'm appointed in my diocese by my bishop, so I cannot function outside of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis unless I'm invited to another diocese by that local bishop. So my authority really is within my diocese. And then if I'm asked to go outside and my bishop grants that permission and the other bishop asks me to come, then I can go there.
We were watching news, and there's this big case. You probably heard of it. It's Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana, yes.
Yeah.
All over.
Did you hear about that too, Father?
Yeah.
It was on the front page of the Indianapolis Star newspaper, so yes. Right here in my own backyard.
Bill O'Reilly was so rude to that guy. I wanted to just put salt in his coffee. Why was he so mean to that poor priest?
Well,
I didn't see that, so I'm not sure what that's about.
Oh yeah, we're not used to seeing exorcisms and so forth in the media. I mean, when the Exorcist movie came out, it was like, and there were some UFO movies, and I remember some news teams kind of making themselves look very unprofessional. For every little light in the sky, they reported a UFO sighting over a farmer's field over in. Now it's like they're afraid to talk about anything and everything. So when this thing comes out, people are like, ooh, yeah, they never do any reporting on that. Certainly you would have been called if it was something that was legitimate and wasn't just,
Indiana's awfully a big state, too.
Yeah, there are 5 dioceses in the state of Indiana. And so the Diocese of Gary, which is up in the Chicago area, currently there are 2 exorcists in the state of Indiana. There's me and there's another priest. Some of the priests appointed to the role wish to remain anonymous, so their name is not known. And then some of us, like myself, the name is known. And I've never kept it a secret, and sometimes people always say, well, isn't the identity supposed to be a secret? But I've always believed that if you don't know who the priest is, then how do you know who to call to get the help that you want? And sometimes we shroud the whole ministry of exorcism in so much secrecy that it's almost like we give the devil more credit than he's due, because he doesn't deserve it.
Thank you, Father. You're so right.
So, the purpose of an exorcism is not to focus on the reality of the devil. It's to focus on the power of Jesus Christ, and to help one who is suffering to discover that either for the first time or perhaps rediscover it in their life.
Father, can you explain to our listeners? You are the buck stops here, man. You are basically, when all else fails, when, medicine, they've already determined there's no medical cause, there's no mental cause. You are, the last final frontier. Can you give our listeners an idea of not the specific details of cases, but an average of, we've already discussed about when you can have a priest or a laity say, minor exorcisms, or what you had discussed as supplicating exorcism. When you have to go in and do the major rite of exorcism, is it like they show in movies? Can it just be done in like 5 or 10 minutes and you're out of there? And does any of the exorcisms take 2 or 3 times or months to do?
Well, the length of an exorcism can depend on the extent of the evil that's present. So just as much as the Catholic Church speaks of the choir of angels, the 9 choirs that St. Thomas speaks of, St. Thomas Aquinas, so when the angels fell, mentioned there in the book of Revelation, and Satan's tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky, the Bible sometimes refers to angels as stars, so 1/3 of the angels fell. So they fell from the choirs. So just as much as angels can vary in their rank, power, and ability, that's true of the demons as well, since they fell from these. And when an exorcism is done, it may not known to which degree evil is present in this person's life. A fascinating question that I'm often asked is, Jesus performed exorcisms, they were immediate and they were effective. Why is it that we have to repeat them over and over again? And the answer is that there seems to be a difference between exorcisms that are performed in the pagan world, so people who have never heard the power of the Word of God, then when they hear it, they leave immediately, and then the apostate world, where we have heard the good news, but now we've turned a deaf ear to it. And it seems to be that in the apostate world, evil will claim to have a greater hold because people heard the truth and they chose to reject it.
Excellent answer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's very sad to think about,
too. Kenny, if you think about some of the people we've helped, he's right on the mark.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an answer to a lot of these. Even Catholic Protestant conversations we have, there's conversations about what is significant, and this is the question, and it leads from this, the significance of a priest, in relation to the apostles. Okay, we know about apostle succession, but if you can fill us in, because people say, everybody has the authority to cast out demons in Jesus' name, and what happens? In the book Glimpses of the Devil, there was a minister named Terry that got thrown across the room in the wake of Malachi Martin coming to visit with this psychiatrist's patient. And, I see that as a growing problem with a lot of these people watching TV shows and then buying Roman collars and online ordinations for very cheap. And then they go right into it. We know the big guns, the history, the case study, the experience, and everything does seem to lie within the Roman Catholic Church. And we had a Protestant who was also a Ph.D. in demonology, William Bradshaw.
Dr. Bradshaw. Yeah, Dr. Bradshaw.
Yes. And he recognized the history and the authority of the Church, and it was surprising. It was like listening to C.S. Lewis.
Uh-huh.
But what does bring the authority to the Roman collar clergy, such as yourself? And I know from your track record, just personally, and others do, recognize that it goes just beyond, something so simple as to say everybody has authority and use Jesus' name. It's so much more than that. Could you fill us in on that to give us, the details on that from your perspective?
I think the key ingredient is faith. So one can't just be doing this as show or for hype or for honor, for glory, because ultimately the power rests with Jesus Christ. The priest I worked with in Rome told me that he goes, if you're ever doing an exorcism and you focus on yourself, you've just crossed on unholy ground, because he says you as a human can't go up against a demon on your own. You have to have the power of God and the authority of the church behind you. So when priests do an exorcism, that's what they take into the fight against evil. I think sometimes there are people that think it's just fun and entertaining, or perhaps they think it's a way to make a quick buck. So their motives are wrong. But the level of faith is very, very important. When Jesus returned to his hometown, the Bible says that he wasn't able to do much, so much did their lack of faith, discourage him. So the level of faith that we have is important. The Catholic Church certainly doesn't have a monopoly on the practice of exorcism, because ultimately it's rooted in faith, and there are faithful people all over the place. But because it is the liturgical rite of the Catholic Church, there's a very prescribed way that the Church says that it should be performed. I was at a conference recently, and the main exorcist there in Spain, Father Jose Antonio Fortea, he was the main speaker, and he was saying that oftentimes in an exorcism, the most important person there is the very pious person. He said it may be the elderly woman that's in the back of the room praying her rosary, that in reality she's doing 95% of the work in defeating the devil, because it's holiness that's really, attacking the evil one. One's growing in holiness and sanctity is drawing closer to God, and God ultimately is going to defeat the power of evil.
Everybody out there hear that? The prayer warriors teams, everybody who has a deliverance team, liberation healing ministry, there's so much power. And I can say, my mother and father prayed for us for years going in and out, and my wife's mother and family and grandmother, and all these prayers. It's just, if people only knew, it's like
people today may discount the importance of prayer. I was talking with somebody one time who was saying that, their sister had become a contemplative nun and was spending her life in prayer, and someone's like, well, she's not doing anything then, she's just wasting her life. So there are a lot of people today that discount the value of prayer, but ultimately that's what's going to defeat the evil one.
Father, if you were going to tell someone in our audience that might be having difficulty or might be having nightmares, might have dabbled in something, what is the number one thing that you can advise somebody to get back on track with their lives? Can you give somebody advice that is just, they just don't know what's wrong? They don't know what they did wrong.
Well, I think the place to begin is by talking to their own local pastor, their own local priest, and confiding in that person kind of what they believe is going on. I have to say that by the time people contact me, they aren't asking me to help them sort out what is going on in their lives. These people are already convinced that they're possessed. They've either done their own research or self-diagnosis. So a lot of times people get frustrated with me because they call me and they're like, well, I know what the problem is, and Father, this is what you need to do. And I always think that's like going to your doctor and saying, doctor, this is what's wrong with me, now fix me.
Exactly. Can you give me open heart surgery now, because I know it's the right valve that's not working right.
And I always want to try to determine on my own what really is going on in someone's life. And sometimes people will get frustrated, and because of that, they may turn to other avenues that they believe are going to help them. Yeah. They may turn to psychics or mediums and whatnot, but they don't realize they're taking a bad situation and making it even worse, because evil cannot be defeated with evil.
No.
Do you have an influx of cases that involve ghost hunters calling you up?
Well, I've had ghost hunters call me who actually were calling for help.
Wow.
They realized that what they thought was entertaining, they were actually encountering demons. And they didn't really know what to do with it. They're like, hey, I didn't sign up for this, Father. This was just supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
One of the big questions that people often ask when you deal with the questions of like ghost hunters is, are they encountering demons, or are they encountering spirits of those who are departed? And it does seem that the majority of them are demons that are being encountered. It may be possible that if it's the soul of one who's died, that God is the one who's allowing that to happen. Because one who's died cannot of their own choice choose to remain in this existence, if you will. And it seems that God may allow that in order for the person to receive prayers that they need for their, salvation. You can think of the Catholic perspective of the souls in purgatory who need prayers. And these are the souls, because if it's truly the soul of one who's departed, it's not scary, it's not terrifying. It's almost like these people are reaching out, asking for prayer. Once again, as we just said earlier, the power of prayer is important for all of us.
Yeah. There's an essence of evil, presence, and people will feel that doom, and it's not just, ooh, what's that noise coming from? Or I just heard a disembodied voice. People can turn that into something scary because it's supernatural. But in the wake of evil, like you said, evil is as evil does. Well, you calling everything demons and stuff? Well, everything is demon. I don't. So the only time people get a hold of us, by then it is demons usually. And I figure it's probably the same with you too. And luckily we filter it out before it actually gets to one of the offices of Archdiocese to pass on to higher order, such as yourself, or rather than the parish priest to come in and just bless the place, or prayer teams ring in the background, and some simple solutions, which you can get rid of ghosts that way. I even said the Chapel of Divine Mercy seems to be a great prayer to pray to get rid of what we call purgatory ghosts.
And I think anybody that ministers to somebody who believes they're up against the forces of evil, you need to take them seriously, because, if you don't really take them seriously and you go to bless their house just to kind of appease them, well, your faith isn't really that strong. If it really is evil, then it really isn't going to do any good. So you just need to kind of believe that people are dealing with maybe some type of evil, and then try to help them sort that out. Once again, is this infestation? Is it vexation? Is it obsession? But once again, demonic possession would be something that's a possibility, but it's extremely rare. I would make a quick comment about demonic oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of Job in the Old Testament, who was oppressed by the devil. You can think of St. Paul in the New Testament. There in 2 Corinthians talks about the thorn in the flesh that he suffered, the messenger from Satan sent to torment him to keep him from becoming proud. You can think of modern-day examples like Padre Pio. It does seem to be that God may allow some people to be oppressed in order to help them grow in sanctification, to help them grow in holiness. So oppression could actually be viewed as a gift from God.
Yeah. It's not a long-term stage, like, an infestation seems to be just that, like an infestation like is the roaches. And we call something an investigation phase like a scout in Rome. It's where it's almost like a temporary thing, like it has its purpose, it's executed its plan, a visit, to check you out, a warning or whatever. And oppression of that stage that you're talking about there is actually has all the symptoms of oppression, but it's short-term, and it's not like they brought it on themselves through, ungodly practices and so forth, but it has all the earmarkings of it, and suddenly it's gone, like those PK cases, which brings me to a question that I want to ask you about children. The old parapsychology notion is that, a child is just going through puberty.
Mm-hmm.
PK. Have you done any children possessions that you can share with us? And, the parents describe that kind of PK energy, kind of, mojo stuff going on there where things are getting rather noisy, poltergeist style. Could you detail to our listeners about those type of cases that you've handled?
If a child is under the age of reason, which is under the age of 7, then that child cannot of their own invite evil in. God would protect and safeguard them because, the age of reason. At least from a Catholic perspective, that's the age of 7, which is why that's the age of First Communion, First Reconciliation, because by then children have a good grasp of right and wrong. So if one is under the age of reason, evil can only be present in their life because it's brought on by a parent or somebody with some authority over them. Now, if one is over the age of reason, then they can certainly bring that on themselves. That could certainly be true of, teenagers and whatnot. You look at a lot of young people today, they're bored with church. It's no longer fun. They'll tell you it's the same old thing. And then these people are dabbling with occult practices because it does seem to be more fun, more exciting. And as a result, they could be bringing things about in their lives that, they're not really qualified to deal with.
That's interesting, Father, that you said that the age of reason is the most important thing that protects a child. This latest story that, we had mentioned earlier entailed a case of a child that had supposedly witnessed by I believe it was a social worker and an officer of the law. The child had walked up the wall backwards. Have you witnessed any sort of activity like that of a child or adult or levitation? Have you witnessed that in any of your exorcisms?
Well, I've witnessed an example of levitation when I was in Rome in one of the exorcisms. But one of the things I always try to do is not to really pay much attention or focus on that, because that really is the devil just trying to give the impression that, once again, he's more powerful than he really is. Because people then get caught up with all the theatrics of the evil one, that it distracts them from the power of Christ in their life. Because I know that case that you're talking about, the walking up the wall, that's that case again out of Gary, Indiana.
Yeah.
That was witnessed. But, people get
it is very rare.
Fear has no place in the life of one who has a relationship with Jesus Christ or who has faith. Fear has no place. But people start seeing things that kind of defy natural logic and reason, and then they can kind of give into that fear.
What part does pride become an ultimate enemy? And I noticed that it does seem to play a part, and it seeks sin. Just like forgiveness. You can feel like you forgive somebody, and really you haven't. And then you have to, go to a counselor, and they tell you, well, have you, do you murmur against the person when you speak of them? You speak ill of them? Well, yeah, I'm still upset with the fact that, you haven't forgiven him. And I was like, oh boy, it's like I thought, just because I don't want to kill him anymore, you forgive him.
You're talking about killing to a priest?
Well, pride is a weird thing, too. Pride sneaks in there, and it's hard to recognize pride, because we're encouraged to take pride in our work to a certain level, and it's really hard. It's a hard, fine line walk. Tell us a little bit of something about pride, because pride doesn't belong in deliverance ministry, period, and especially exorcism.
A key ingredient has to be humility. Pride makes you think that perhaps you're better than everyone else. There's a lot of people today that carry a lot of anger, bitterness, and resentment in them, and they feel justified in that. But those are the things that we have to surrender to, because otherwise they just continue to eat away at us. Because, I think the evil one would look for some type of foothold in our lives, and I think pride can be one of the ways that we give a foothold to the devil.
After the job is done, so I've had clients who actually went back and started doing the same thing that got them in trouble to begin with, because they felt, I'm okay, I can breathe a sigh of relief, and then they get back to going back to their old bad habits again. What's your experience?
I won't actually work with anyone who is not really sincere in wanting to change and bring about a true conversion in their life. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is, there in Luke's Gospel, it talks about how, the demons cast out, and then it goes and wanders through the arid wasteland, and then it comes back and finds the house all cleaned up, and then the situation of the person is worse than before because it brings back 7 demons worse than itself. So the evil one will know that if it was successful in somehow entering a person's life in the past, that person may be more susceptible to that in their own life. So people really have to have the strong desire to convert.
Wow.
Go ahead, Farah.
Well, I just, that brings me to a curiosity that, we've been studying is the generational curses. Like, I've spoken about this with other people before, such as Father, what's pointed out in the Bible, how, King David, once he laid eyes on Bathsheba and made the choice to have her husband murdered, he basically set a curse upon his family that affected him, through his children, and Solomon, the same way through worshiping with his wives. And can you address that, Father? People wonder, if I'm involved in a satanic cult and I'm offering my children up for sacrifice, or, just like if I was a Catholic person offering my child up to the Christian church, can a satanic person do that to a child? Can they curse their child by offering their child to the devil?
They can if the child is under the age of reason, because they're going to expose them to that. So there was one of the exorcisms in Rome. It was a young girl who shared with me that her mother dedicated her to Satan when she was born because her mother didn't really want her, and so she blamed God for giving her a child that she didn't want, so she wanted to get even with God by raising the girl in the satanic church, if you will. And so when the girl was 14, she finally ran away from that, ended up on the streets of Rome, and then made her way to the priest I was working with, who then began to minister to her the major rite of exorcism. And then she was able to be freed from all that. And then
it had a happy ending.
Well, then she went on to become a nun. So she dedicated her life to becoming a religious person, and then she dedicated her life to ministering to the street children there in Rome.
Wow. That's a good story.
Really miraculous.
So, I mean, it is possible that we can impact others. When we're adults, I personally believe that vexation or curses are only effective if we believe in them. Because if one is a person of faith, if you're a Catholic, for example, if you're going to church, you're receiving the sacraments, if you're praying on a daily basis, the devil's already on the run. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. It's the very ordinary things that will defeat the devil.
Yeah, and it's so simple. It really is that simple, Father. To stay in faith and to use that faith to daily live in gratitude and say our prayers and be thankful from when we get up to when we go to bed. We don't have to be saying, every morning, lauds at 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, and Vespers at 9. We have to be prayerful, mindful people, and you're saying this is enough to keep the devil away.
Yes, it's the very ordinary things. Now, when I tell people that when they come to me and say they're up against evil, and I say to them, well, you need to pray more, and these are the things you need to do, they look at me like I'm crazy. And then I always jokingly say that if I ask them to go out the next night at midnight and swing a dead cat around their head and howl at the moon, they would ask me, where do I get the dead cat? So people are always quick to want to do the bizarre. But the very simple things that will defeat the evil one, people are like, really? That's it? You just want me to pray? I had as a Catholic priest, half the people who call me are not Catholic. Mm-hmm. And I had a non-Catholic young man from Illinois call me last year, and he was saying to me that his live-in girlfriend, was up against the forces of evil, and he did what he was supposed to do, but the evil didn't leave. And so I was curious, and I said, well, what were you supposed to do? He goes, well, I burned sage in the house because I understand that demons don't like the smell of sage. And I was like, are you listening to yourself? Because once again, to him, the power was in, you could say that he wasn't equating the real power in Jesus Christ. He was putting power in the sage, which has no power. So sacramentals, as we talked about earlier, are only representations of components of our faith. But if we don't have the component of faith, then they're nothing. Because, as an exorcist, I always tell people, I don't have a bag of tricks. I don't have any lucky charms. I don't have the magic beads that I bring along. People look for that, but none of that is there.
You mean you don't give them the little thin mint like you find on a nice hotel pillow at night? You say, here's your magic Dumbo feather.
Yeah, they look for that, but sometimes I think I disappoint them by not giving them that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They rely so much on that they it's like, I'm cured. Now I can go back to my regular life again. And they don't realize that, hey, you're a diabetic who's not going to ever be over diabetes. Now you have to get on a special diet of, spiritual. And who do you hand that to? Who's the next guy you recommend now that your job's done as the closer, at least for the deliverance part of it, the exorcism, so that the person doesn't get reinfected with this spiritual ailment?
Well, once again, I think that it has to be the minister of their own particular church. They need that ongoing pastoral care, and that's going to happen within their own church community. And it may be then that their pastor may link them up with, prayer teams within the parish. They can be with them. But once again, people need to be linked to their community because, Christ came to create community. He gave us the church, which is a word that means community. The devil is really all about division, the whole notion divide and conquer. So people need to be connected with community. That's very powerful in helping to keep evil at bay.
Oh, yes. Well, you know what, Father? This has been one of the most fascinating hours of my entire life, and I'm getting up there. I'm like 52, okay?
Well, I'll be 51 here in 2 months.
So much.
Yeah.
So it was just such an honor and such a pleasure to have you, and we are so looking forward to having you back. That's why we're not going to be big pigs and keep you on here an extra hour. We're going to let you go to sleepy pie now.
Yeah, we're going on 10 o'clock here in Indiana. We're on the Eastern time.
Well, we'll love to have you back on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds great.
And we want to wish you many blessings, much peace, and we really are glad that you have an executive assistant. Our tribunal here doesn't have one, and that's got to be difficult. I can't imagine how difficult it is. And
I asked for my assistant. That's how I got one.
Asking you shall receive, Father.
That's
I love
right.
it.
My bishop is pretty receptive and easy to talk to, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. God bless you and your ministry and all that you've done, and
all right,
we look forward to having you on.
Good to speak with you.
Mm-hmm. Good to speak with you, Father Lampert. Thank you so very much for helping us out tonight, and we so look forward to talking to you again.
Very good. Well, God bless you and your ministry.
Thank you, Father. Have a great night. Bye now.
Good night.
This is Kenneth Deel along with my wife, Farah Rose Deel, and we're going to talk to you real quick about our books. So we have 5 books available right now and 1 on deck. The books are the Catholic Demonologist Handbook along with the Workbook and Study Guide, and the Christian Demonologist Handbook along with the Workbook and Study Guide, and that's for all denominations. Well, we also have the Haunting Self-Help Guidebook.
Any and all of these books are going to help direct you to not just the natural causes, prevention, prayers to assist you, to keep you and your family protected.
Yes, real solutions done by real people in the field. And we're sharing our knowledge and information to help you help yourself or help a friend or a client if you're in the field yourself.
www.swordsofstmichael.org or
www.catholicdemonologist.com. You can buy the books direct and get them personally signed.
Are Are you looking for something special to remind you what a mystical experience prayer can be? Are you looking for something beautiful to hang in your car for protection? Try Prayers by the Bead. You'll find a variety of original, one-of-a-kind Anglican prayer beads, Lutheran, Methodist, Catholic prayer beads that are made to your specification using our materials or your materials, made to order in just about any design that inspires you to get prayed right up.
Farah has about over 100 in her inventory pre-made, and guys, yes, there's plenty of rosaries and designs for you, so to give to your father, for yourself, for your own prayer life.
We have a variety of exorcism medals, including the St. Benedict cross, beads, anything for your spiritual warfare needs. So, if you'd like some more information, find my page on Facebook, Prayers by the Bead.
www.etsy.com/shop/Farah Rose.
Or on Facebook, Prayers by the Bead.